fertility preservation. And we all understand that this is a topic which needs much more exploration, especially in India. Fertility preservation is a very wide topic. It needs a lot of expertise. And so, what we have done is we will be doing a series of webinars as well as physical meetings. And we are going to be touching all the aspects of fertility preservation. And I hope that all the keen members by the end of 1 year will have something very valuable from our learned faculty to carry on. Now, I want to welcome our Secretary General of Indian Fertility Society, Dr. Shweta Gupta, to say few encouraging words, and then we will start our meeting.
Karan, please
So,
change the slide.
yeah, thank you,
Change.
Dr. Shweta and Niti. I think it's it's a very important group actually, and this topic is something which is quite relevant nowadays, and more patients we are seeing which are coming forward, whether it's because of the oncology freezing or whether it's because of the social. So I think every fertility expert should have, as Dr. Shweta rightly said, should know all the, how to do the stimulation. Oocyte freezing is something which is, we are seeing more and more cases nowadays, as what it used to be 5 years back. Lot of now the oncology treatment is improving. We have a good 5 year survival, more than 80% survive. So there is a need of oncology, random protocol freezing, as well as socially. The lifestyle is changing, and we have more patients coming from abroad as well for social freezing. And this is a team, this particular SIG actually is quite brilliant. Whether we start with the mentor, Dr. Nalini Mahajan ma'am, she had not only been the president of the last, of the Indian Fertility Society, but also she had been heading the Fertility Preservation Society. And then the conveners, Dr. Shweta Mittal is doing a lot of cases, Dr. Priya as well, and the co-conveners, they are absolutely energetic and dynamic. So I'm sure this particular SIG will do very good justice with this particular topic, which is very much needed. I think this is the only topic I think which has gone up rather than IVF. Each unit is now seeing one or few cases of fertility preservation. So I won't waste much time. I'll hand it over to Dr. Shweta and Dr. Priya for the further webinar.
I would like to invite Shweta ma'am. Please introduce us to the webinar. Karan, can you display Dr. Shweta ma'am CV?
Thank you, Dr. Niti. I think I'll hand it over to you without spending more time, and you can just move on with the webinar.
Sure, ma'am. Sure. Karan, please come to the chairpersons. So let's invite Dr. Sanjay Desai and Dr. Puneet Rana Arora ma'am for the session 1, which is an overview of oocyte cryopreservation. Do we have Dr. Sanjay and Dr. Puneet here? Dr. Sanjay, yes, we have you here, sir. Am I audible? Dr. Puneet Rana, ma'am?
Is Dr. Priya Bhave there?
Dr. Sanjay is logged in, but I don't know. He's not responding, ma'am.
Dr. Kokila, can you just talk to him? Is Dr. Kokila there?
She's saying everyone is muted. Karan, can you unmute everyone?
Now unmute.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to invite Dr. Sanjay Desai, sir, for the chairperson for the session 1. Sir is center head Nova Wings IVF Hospital in Rajkot. We welcome you, sir. He's still muted. Karan?
I think everyone is muted and they cannot do unmuting. So, Dr. Sanjay?
Dr. Sanjay is also muted.
Yes, he's muted. I think, ma'am, you can go ahead.
Okay.
You can go ahead, and I'll call him and ask him to join if he has not joined. Let me ask.
Okay.
But ma'am, you
So
can go ahead with the other chairperson.
I think Dr. Puneet Rana Arora madam hasn't joined as well. I called her up.
We'll make them join and give their expert comments. We can go ahead with the talk
Yes,
Sure,
yes, right, ma'am.
because there is a quiz
sure.
after this, so they would need the platform.
Sure, ma'am, sure. Karan, can you display Dr. Nalli ma'am's CV? Shweta ma'am, please invite Nalli ma'am
Yeah,
for
I
the
will.
talk.
Can I have her CV?
इसके बाद है next, yes.
So it's a very great pleasure to introduce this first speaker of our seminar today, webinar, and she's Dr. Nalini Mahajan. We know her very well. She has also been an ex-president of Indian Fertility Society. She has been the founder, president of Fertility Preservation Society of India. She has very keen interest, I know, and delved into ovarian tissue cryopreservation also. At the moment, she's director of Mother and Child Hospital at Defense Colony. So this is her whole CV, what we can see. And ma'am, we welcome you to the podium to give us an overview on oocyte cryopreservation.
Thank you, Shweta. Thank you so much for inviting me. Let me see if I can
And
get
also, she's the
right.
mentor of this group,
Of
SIG.
course, I'm the- Sharing is not turned on, it says. Please turn on sharing.
Karan, please help. Good evening, Nalini ma'am.
Good evening, Vita.
Neeti, can you send me Karan's number? Then I'll keep calling.
Sure, ma'am, I will.
Now you can try, ma'am.
Okay, yeah, now I can try. Yeah, thank you. So, are you able to see the slides? Are the slides visible?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Yes, you can see.
Yeah, you can see them now? Okay. So, we know about
संजय भाई ने join था कौन है webinar में, please.
Can I go ahead? Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am, we can see.
All right. So, oocyte cryopreservation is very important for prolonging the reproductive window, and we know
Ma'am,
that.
can you increase your volume a bit?
Okay.
Yeah.
See. Oh, sorry. Go back. It's full on the volume on my side is full, Shweta.
Now it is okay, ma'am.
It's okay?
Yeah.
So basically, we do this to prolong the reproductive window, and this is done whenever we are anticipating a reduction in the ovarian reserve, be it because of gamete damage, because of gonadotoxic therapy, autoimmune disorders, or gamete depletion, which we see in advanced maternal age, or unexplained premature ovarian insufficiency. And we know that ovarian insufficiency or women with low ovarian reserve, we are seeing more and more of them. And it's estimated that at least 3.7% of women worldwide have a decreased ovarian reserve. Now, both these therapeutic as well as elective freezing are on the rise because the benefits outweigh the risks. In fertility, oncofertility, the woman, if she has preserved her oocytes, is twice as likely to have a child. Pregnancy is protective in many cancers. And we know that ART after chemotherapy has a very low, pregnancy rate. So far as elective freezing is concerned, it gives reproductive autonomy, it empowers the woman, she avoids involuntary childlessness later on and avoids all the, decreased pregnancy rates that are associated with advanced maternal age. So even though there are a few risks, especially because it's a surgical procedure or there may be loss in thawing, but the benefits outweigh the risks. Now, the counseling remains the first step in fertility preservation, whichever it is. And this is important, both psychosocial as well as genetic counseling, in wherever required, to make an informed decision. And what you have to focus on is to discuss the procedure, to discuss the benefits and risks, and also inform the woman that there are alternative childbearing bearing options, for example, donor oocytes later, if she is not keen, so that she doesn't feel pressurized that she has to go in, and she makes this decision of her own free will. And also, especially in case of cancer patients or any other patient who may be having a condition which may later on affect her during the pregnancy stage, we have to discuss all that before she takes the decision and before we take them up. So having done that, you plan the management and you evaluate the patient, looking at her general health, her ovarian reserve. We look at the age, look at, especially in cancer patients, whether it's estrogen sensitive or not, what is the urgency of doing the chemotherapy, how fast we have to proceed, the risk of ovarian involvement, and if she's had any previous exposure to chemotherapy, because all this is going to impact our ovarian stimulation and ultimately the quality of the egg. You also have to bear in mind that cancer treatment has to be prioritized. You need appropriate consent. You need consent for posthumous use of gametes, and that actually is now across the board for cancer as well as non-cancer patients. And if you're doing gamete preservation after chemotherapy, you have to wait for at least 6 to 8 months, because that is the time where the primordial to primary to secondary follicles are slowly growing, and they are going to be exposed to chemotherapy and will have genetic mutations, and that will become a problem for the patient. So evaluation of ovarian reserve is with AMH and AFC, as we all know, and this is done so that we can calculate the dose, we can assess high or low response, we can individualize counseling, especially when it comes to low ovarian reserve, and you have to tell the patient what her chances are and whether she really wants to go ahead. And in cancer patients, Okay, can you see it now? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
It's visible. It's visible, ma'am. Yeah.
can see.
I think where we were was don't know what has happened to this.
I think we were at the slide, ma'am, where AMH we were discussing and the
Okay.
future of
So
Whittle.
basically, we know that why we calculate the dose and we assess the response, and that is why we need the ovarian reserve. And so far as optimal oocyte numbers go, and 20 and above gives us at least a 60 to 70% chance of pregnancy, but this does not really apply with age and cancer, because we know that there is a plateau after the age of 35, and you may collect more than 20 eggs, but the pregnancy rates are going to remain at about 50%. And in cancer, the pregnancy rates will be lower and the plateau comes a little earlier than 20 oocytes. Now, the reason for this, of course, is that oocyte survival post-thaw is lower in cancer patients, and the ovarian function is compromised because of the general cachexia and the increased cytokine and other effects of cancer per se. Now, we also know that there is a reduced response to ovarian stimulation in cancer patients, especially in lymphoma and leukemia, where it has been proven. And in BRCA1 mutations also, especially around the age of 35, the oocyte or reserve starts going down. And also in women with ovarian surgery or ovarian disease, the response is going to be lower, because that's understandable. Now, now that we have segmental protocols and the risk of OHSS has decreased, so it has emboldened us to do aggressive ovarian stimulation, because we want to get to that number of 20 or more to have a good chance of pregnancy later on. So does this increase or affect the quality of the oocyte, and does it cause more aneuploid oocytes in? Now, this paper by Irani in 2020 suggests that none of neither the dosage nor the stimulation nor the numbers actually compromise the ploidy status of the embryo. However, a more recent paper by Berger in 2023 suggests that even though overall in the overall picture they couldn't show a statistical significance, but they showed that there was a higher proportion of good embryos, which seemed to be concentrated where the number of oocytes recovered was lower. So we should bear that in mind. So hyperstimulation or aggressive stimulation does not really help that much, because even we know when we are stimulating and we recover the eggs, especially for instance in a PCO patients where we are going to get so many, it's always a mixed lot. You don't necessarily get all the good oocytes. And in fertile women, you would have observed that in donors, even if the numbers are low, the quality of the eggs is all good. So how many cycles do we need to reach the target number? It of course depends on oocyte reserve, and therefore you could be doing 1 cycle, 2 cycle, 3 cycles, depending on what the AMH is, and also depending on what you have recovered in the first cycle. When to freeze is the next important question. We know that age dictates the outcome. Age at storage dictates the outcome. So that would suggest that the younger the woman is, the better that is. But that really is not really cost effective. And also one must consider that the woman, if she has a good reserve, may get married in that time, have a baby, and then what is the point of her having gone through a procedure and also all the resources wasted towards freezing. Now the optimal time suggested was 37 years. They've brought it down to about 35. But for Indian women, really the ideal time is 32 to 35 years because of the ethnic differences that we have. And this, of course, is subject to the ovarian reserve. If the ovarian reserve is lower at a younger age, then we have to go ahead and freeze at that age. And this, of course, we are referring to elective freezing, because in therapeutic freezing, we can't be bothered about these things. We have to do it as and when required. Now, planning the ovarian stimulation protocol, we know we have the conventional protocol, the antagonist protocol, and then in cancer patients or where there is an urgency, we can use a random start protocol where we start ovarian stimulation from any day of the cycle. The dose is calculated based on age, BMI, and the ovarian reserve. The type of gonadotrophin you use could be recombinant, could be HMG. Please remember that especially this is true for your cancer patients, that you may have an unexpected poor response, or if they are older age group or poor reserve, you must add LH, because there you are not going to get a second chance to do it. In elective freezing, you may.
Excuse me, ma'am. Sorry to interrupt. Slides are not moving. Is it moving from your end?
Yeah, it's perfectly moving from my
Okay, so I think we are not being able to see those
Yes,
slides
I'm
moving.
calling Karan ma'am.
Okay.
स्लाइड मूव नहीं कर रही है मैम की.
मैम आप ना दोबारा से शेयर वो
स्टॉप
शेयर
शेयर करके फिर शेयर करूं,
Yes,
शेयर
ma'am. Yes.
करके फिर लॉग इन करिए.
फिर से लॉग इन फिर से करूं. लेट
नहीं
मी
लॉग
शेयर
इन नहीं,
फर्स्ट.
No, no,
let
ma'am.
me share.
Please share again.
Yeah,
बस शेयर अगेन करिए.
yeah. Can you now see the slides?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Please
And we
move.
can see. Yeah.
And
Right.
this is the slide with the protocols?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So we were talking about the protocols, and I think everybody knows we have the random start for the cancer patients or wherever there's an urgency, and conventional start protocols. And so I was talking about the gonadotropin, that in the cancer patients, it is better because you may get an unexpected poor response and you don't have the time to do another stimulation. So please add LH to the FSH when you are starting the stimulation. Now, in cancer patients, for hormone receptor positive patients, especially in breast cancer, letrozole or tamoxifen is added to gonadotropin. And in endometrial cancer, which are ER positive, you can add only letrozole and not tamoxifen. Antagonist protocols remain the protocol of choice, and they are short and quick. You can finish within 12 days. The efficiency we know now is equivalent to the long agonist protocol, so that remains the protocol of choice. We can give an agonist trigger, and that also reduces the risk of ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. Now, which of the two should you use, letrozole or tamoxifen? Letrozole, we know, starts at about 2.5 or 5 milligrams from the second day of the period, or along with the gonadotropin. And then after pickup, you can continue with it to keep the estradiol levels low, which is the whole idea. The safety margin increases. Tamoxifen, you can give 20 or 60 milligrams, and it is given again even after the stimulation, and you can carry it on because it is a part of breast cancer treatment as well. Now, it is said of letrozole that it reduces the M2 numbers, it impacts the follicular microenvironment, increases the androgen to estrogen ratio, and therefore alters oocyte morphology. Now, so one has to think of these things, and you find that the fertilization levels are poorer if the oocyte morphology is abnormal. Tamoxifen does not reduce the number of, does not reduce the ovarian reserve. It's used in breast cancer. So sometimes, the patients can defer, if they are young enough, they can defer oocyte freezing. And it works very well. It's long-term safety in terms of recurrence rate, overall survival rate for breast cancer patient has been very well established. In terms of efficacy, it's equivalent to letrozole plus gonadotropin. So it is really your choice what you wish to use. I actually prefer to use tamoxifen. Now, the random start protocol, which is very, popular for cancer patients because they just arrive any day and we don't have the time. So we start the stimulation on any day of the cycle. Antagonist is added when the follicle size is about 12 millimeters in the cohort that we are, targeting. And we have to remember that the length of this stimulation is going to be at least 2 days longer, and the total dose of gonadotropins used is significantly higher than the regular D2 protocols. PPOS is another very good protocol. It's turned out to be very efficacious, and it reduces the need to give another injection. You can give 10 milligrams of medroxyprogesterone or 20 of dydrogesterone. In terms of oocyte numbers, M2s, it's equally efficacious. And You can start it actually as a flexible protocol also. So on day 5 or 6, you can actually take your decision whether you want to give PPOS or you want to give an antagonist, and you can use a dual trigger along with it. Now, the concern in cancer patients with PPOS is that it is, progesterones may stimulate growth and diffusion of the malignancy, especially when we are looking at breast cancers. So should we avoid it? So far, there is just one paper on PPOS in, cancer patients, and but there isn't enough data. They haven't looked at any long-term follow-ups, so I don't think we should go there. But there's a cancer wherein it is effective and it is beneficial rather than the antagonist, and that is in endometrial carcinoma or even in endometrial atypical hyperplasias, because it keeps the lining thin and therefore it protects the endometrial lining, and it's equally efficacious in terms of good quality embryo rate. It is as good as the antagonist. So in terms of feasible and safe strategy, it definitely works in endometrial cancer. In endometrial cancer, we can also use LNG IUDs for in the uterus, and you can use that as a down regulation because it secretes progesterone, keeps the endometrial lining thin. You don't actually need to give any other thing to down regulate. It works very well on its own. Now, the dual stim protocol, again, we use it to yield the maximum number of oocytes. So you stimulate both in the luteal and the follicular phase. So after the pickup, you give a break of 2 or 3 days and then carry on with the stimulation all over again. It is physically stressful, it is psychologically stressful, but when you are aiming for more eggs, and in patients who are willing to go for this kind of a within the same cycle 2 stimulations, it's fine, they can do that. But even back-to-back 2 protocols actually yield a similar number of oocytes. In cancer patients, you don't have time for that, and therefore you need to maximize numbers in cancer patients. Perhaps this becomes important there. Now, the guidelines also suggest the same thing, that antagonist protocol is the protocol of choice. Random start when there is urgent fertility preservation needed, and GnRH agonist as the safe trigger, which is safe for these patients. Now, what about adolescents? We are getting more and more young people now who are coming in with cancers, and we are trying to preserve their fertility. They have a long way to go in life, and they will need to fulfill their family and other things that they should have a fulfilled life. Now, the problem in adolescents is that the HPO axis is still gaining maturity, and the FSH-LH levels are still stabilizing. The LH is rising progressively. They're relatively lower FSH levels. So assessing ovarian reserve also becomes a problem, because AMH and if you're doing AFC transabdominally, and the AMH levels are still not really stable, they are getting there. What is the choice of gonadotrophins to use in these is that you do use a combination of FSH and LH, because we know that the HPO axis is still immature, and you will need both the hormones and treat them just like a hypogonadotrophic hypogonadism patient. Now, the concerns there are that we see that there is more abnormal morphology in the young. So even of the oocytes we do preserve, what is the outcome we are expecting is still, research-based. We really don't know. There has just been about 1 pregnancy from there. The risk of ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome is very great, because you cannot use the agonist trigger in many of them because of the baseline LH levels. They may be very low, and then you will get immature oocytes. The risk of cancellation is much higher, and of course you're doing a transabdominal pickup, so procedural risks are there. So it is still regarded as an innovative procedure for premenarchal girls or perimenarchal girls. Now, baseline assessment of FSH, LH, E2 and MH is important, and then monitor E2 and LH during the stimulation, because that will give you information about the follicular growth and competence, and you will be able to decide on the type of your trigger. Check for progesterone and LH levels 14 hours following the agonist trigger to ensure that your trigger was effective. Inadequate response is defined as progesterone less than 3 nanograms and LH under 15 international units per liter. Now, the long protocol can only and only be used if your baseline FSH-LH values have reached adult status. That indicates that the HPO axis is mature. Otherwise, please do not use it. You will need a longer stimulation, and the risk of OHSS increases because you have to give HCG as a trigger. Antagonist is the ideal protocol. In girls where the baseline LH is very low, you may need not give an antagonist at all. Just do the LH levels and you will need to give an HCG trigger here. Now, again, a couple of studies just to show that you need higher doses in younger participants and more cycles cancelled, almost 10% in women, in young girls who are under 20 years of age. But they do respond and you are able to get oocytes because this is important for cancer patients. Now, looking at the reproductive outcome, women with in onco fertility will have a 2.5 times an increased chance of giving birth if they have preserved their oocytes as compared to if they have not preserved. And the live birth rates are about in the range of 20 to 45%. There is a lower pregnancy rate with oocytes which have been cryopreserved after cancer treatment because of the effects of the cancer therapy itself on the oocytes. In elective oocyte cryopreservation, as we said, you have about a 70% possibility of pregnancy. Over 38 with the same 20 oocytes, you'll have 48% chances of pregnancy. With 10 to 15, it will be 37%, and over 40, this drops down to almost 19%. The utilization, of course, of these cryopreserved oocytes is low, was reported very low initially, but now, at least with elective freezing, it is started moving up. Is there an age limit now? You've frozen these, but when should you put it back? You have to remember advanced maternal age, because if they keep on delaying, putting back the embryos, fertilizing the oocytes and putting back embryos, there are higher risks of ectopic, first trimester losses, obstetric risk, preterm birth, low birth, and cesarean births. So the counseling to these women has to be that at least when they are 40 or 41, before 40, 45, after 45, the complications or the risk, obstetric risks really spiral up for women, and they should use them by that time. Safety has been established for cancer patients. There have been many studies done on this, and we know that it's perfectly safe in breast cancer, in lymphomas, in gynae cancers. So will the child be normal? That is a very valid concern. Will there be an increased risk of cancer? Fortunately, neither congenital abnormalities nor is the risk of cancer increased. And this is another paper to show that congenital anomaly risk is not raised way beyond what we would see with other oocytes. Now, health of the child has also been looked into, and it has been seen that the anthropometric parameters are the same as with fresh donor oocytes, and physically and mentally, again, a follow-up done for almost 6 years showed that the child's growth and mental parameters were absolutely normal. So far as safety of freezing, well, we all know that we worry about the loss in freezing, thawing, and loss during storage. But the other important worry is about the epigenetic effects on the oocyte. And at the moment, we don't have any published data to show that, but the concerns are always there, and we don't know what the future studies may show up. So we already did the utilization rate. At the end, I would like to say that especially where we come to elective oocyte freezing, there's still a huge ethical debate, though we are seeing it skyrocketing in terms of women coming up. But, there are opponents who say that this is medicalization of reproduction and you're idealizing the right time of pregnancy. And this actually, in a sense is not wrong, because we are seeing older and older parents, and there are a lot of problems associated with pregnancies which are, or rather children who have older age group parents. In fact, their lifespan the child's lifespan is actually decreased as compared to the lifespan of a child with a normal age group of parents. So many, we don't have time to go into the details of that, but there are many effects that have been seen with mature parents and who then, go on to, in fact, we also use actuarial tables to see should we offer ART to these women or men or the couples where you think that there is a possibility of death before the child is 18 years old. And it is suggested that it should not be done. And if you do it, the onus of that welfare of the child is on the doctor as well, apart from it being on the couple. So these are some of the debates that are there. But overall, we would say, yes, it is empowering. Social freezing is empowering. It prevents involuntary childlessness. But the message must always remain that a woman's best chance of having a healthy child are through natural reproduction at a relatively early age. For therapeutic oocyte cryopreservation should be advocated in the appropriate patient at the right time, and so that she can at least have a quality of life which is offered to everybody else. With that, I'd like to thank you all, and sorry for all the technical problems.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was really an elaborate presentation. Now I would request our chairpersons, Dr. Puneet and Dr. Sanjay, to give your opinions and to move forward. I think let's have about 3-4 minutes of discussion. Dr. Puneet, are you there? There's a question in the chat box.
Sorry,
Yeah.
ma'am. Dr. Puneet ma'am is trying to enter the webinar. Karan, please allow her.
In the meantime, there's a
Yes.
question in the chat
Please
box.
host, ma'am.
What will be the protocol followed in cancer breast patients?
Antagonist protocol is what we will follow in breast cancer patients, along with either letrozole or tamoxifen if they are hormone receptor positive patients. If they are not, then gonadotropin alone is good enough.
Dr. Puneet has joined
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. Thank you. No, so I think the host had disabled me to speak and see
Yeah,
my.
yeah. I
I'm so
think they
sorry.
don't want us to speak. Even I was disabled.
So I'm so sorry for that. So thank you, ma'am. As always, I think you have covered from the basics till the advanced. And I think each and every question I was jotting down what I may, kind of a thing, but you covered in the end everything. So thank you so much for that. Just one kind of a comment and a question, ma'am, that in case a girl comes to you with a cancer who's receiving a very mild dose chemotherapy, which is not very much gonadotoxic. So, what will be the counseling to that particular woman or girl? Should she freeze her eggs, or would you just allow her to finish the chemotherapy and then maybe she can plan pregnancy later?
Age group and marital status.
Hmm.
What is her age group and what is her marital status?
So, 24 years,
24
young
years.
patient, very young girl.
So
Yeah.
at 24, definitely, in a much younger patient at 18 or 19, sometimes such patients come with lymphomas or something where the AMH is very good, and you see that reluctance on the part of the family to put the child through a procedure. You can let her finish her chemotherapy and then monitor the AMH, and when she's a little more settled, you can do. Of course, we do know that post-cancer treatments, the oocytes don't give the same pregnancy result, but in such young patients, I don't think we should take it that far. There would still be some good eggs for her. But in a 24-year, well, she's on that threshold, and I would definitely advise her to go for oocyte freezing before cancer therapy, given that the risk is at least, even if it's mild to moderate, the worry there is of recurrence. Because if you don't freeze at that point in time, and then later she has a recurrence, that's always the balance. That if there is a recurrence, then you're doomed, because then she'll go for higher therapy and you haven't really frozen anything. On the other hand is also this, that when you give chemotherapy, post-chemotherapy, we know the results in terms of pregnancy are not so good. So now she's already moved into the next phase, which is 24 plus. So definitely I would prefer to do it, but we can always give her the option that, okay, you can. These are the issues related to post-chemotherapy. chemotherapy.
Once I had a very young girl, she was a doctor, I remember. She was just on immunomodulatory drugs, not on chemotherapy yet, and we went ahead with
Shweta,
oocyte.
immunomodulatory drugs are known to affect ovarian reserve.
Yeah, so I know I'm just coming to it. So we got good number of oocytes, but not a single oocyte could be frozen because all of them were so abnormal. We had never seen such abnormalities in the oocyte. So even those have to be kept in mind if they are on immunomodulatory drugs. Dr. Sanjay, I could see you. Dr. Sanjay, can I have your opinion and your expert comments? You need to unmute yourself.
The host is not unmuting anybody today.
Yes, thank you, madam. Just now I was looking for an unmarried patient. She was in very low AMH and she was planning for oocyte freezing. Simultaneously, I was handling that case right now.
Nice.
And I refused to ask for oocyte storage because her AMH was 0.2 only.
I agree. I completely agree with you. You know, I recently I had a young girl coming in. Unfortunately, I was laid up in bed, so we just had a video chat. And she was just, I think, 17 years old, 16 or 17 years old. And no, sorry, she was just 11 years old. And I don't know why her AMH had gotten done along with maybe some other blood tests. You know how the labs are, they run every test possible. And the AMH was again 0.1 or 0.2. And the gynecologist referred her, rushed her, said, you rush for oocyte freezing because you're going to get menopausal in 3 months. Now, I think this is a bizarre way of looking at things. One, she's 11 years old. Her AMH still may not be stabilized. You need to reevaluate that AMH. And two, with 0.1, what are you, even if it is genuinely 0.1, what are you going to put that girl through? What for? For that 1 egg or 2 eggs? So sometimes
Could be
we
some
have to
Turner's
balance.
mosaic or something
Sorry?
possible.
No, karyotype was normal.
Ma'am, I have a question. In case we really have a genuine, patient at this particular age group, the 11 to maybe when she's not even entered her puberty, and she is a case of some onco patient, then what do you do? These would be the ones you take up for OTC, ma'am?
Yes, of course. Prepubertal is premenarchal. Perimenarchal, you can still do oocyte freezing, but if it is totally pre, then ovarian tissue cryopreservation is the way to go.
And ma'am, do you have to see an image there? It doesn't make any sense, as you were just saying.
No, see,
No sense whatsoever.
AMH is being done for younger patients also, but to base everything on the AMH at this point may not be wise because we are still really getting there into the charts of, what is the AMH, because now they are saying that earlier it was that it, increases right up to the age of 20, 21 and then stabilizes till 25 and then goes down. But now they are saying that actually the numbers are already all there and the AMH values may actually follow the pattern of what it is later on. The oocyte numbers may follow that pattern. So we are still really getting there in this prepubertal age, and I don't think we should just base it on that. We should freeze because if we are going to lose the ovary anyway, she'll at least save something.
There was one question in the chat box which I'm not able to understand. She said that any role of GnRH agonist in this case. Did you mean like a trigger or a pre-cycle downregulation?
And in which case?
Yeah, in which case? So you can write it in the chat box. I think, ma'am, can we move forward with the panel then? If
Just
there are no
more comment I have, ma'am, Nandini ma'am. So just one question, Dr. Sweta. So when
Yeah,
the uptake of this oocyte cryopreservation is so low, ma'am. So do you think anything we can do to, enhance it? Because it's like 1%, the uptake of,
the therapeutic one.
yeah, that's right. Therapeutic one. So it's very low.
We have
Anything
to work.
I think the way can
SIGs
be.
have to work.
Yes, SIGs have to do more public forums, and the public forums can be in colleges, women colleges,
Yes,
I
awareness.
think that is the place. We are not promoting social egg freezing, but the right indicated, egg
Yes.
freezing.
Okay. Thank you, Nalini ma'am, for a beautiful talk. And I'm sure everybody relished
Which
it.
you were sort of actually out of half the time.
No, I could listen it. No, I was there, but I was just
Participate.
not being able to unmute myself and switch on my video. I was there. I listened all the time.
Okay, thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Shweta, and thank you, Meenu, for having
Thank
me
you,
here.
Dr.
Thank you.
Puneet, but we are going to involve you in much more webinars and moving on because I know that you were holding the same SIG last season. So we are going to move ahead with the, we can just change the CV, please. So we are going to our panel, and
Yes, ma'am.
in our panel, we are going to have interesting cases of fertility
Panelist का CV
preservation.
लगा.
And we have my co-moderators, Dr. Neeti Vijay and Dr. Meenu Vashisht. Our panelists are Dr. Kokila. She's also the co-convener of this SIG, Dr. Tina. She's the director of Asha Punj Fertility and Gynec Center, Bhopal. Dr. Ruchika Goyal, I'm very quickly, just everybody can read their CV. Dr. Shashi Bala Arya. Dr. Shushma Verma, is she there in the panel today? Dr. Pooja Khadi. Then Dr. Gunjan, Dr. Shivali, and Dr. Vardha. Before I start the panel, I really want to thank Dr. Priya Bhave. She is our Central Zonal Coordinator of Indian Fertility Society. And very beautifully, we have got two members from each chapter, which is Chhattisgarh or UP East or West, no, and the MP chapter. So we have brought in all, and there are two representative panelists. So I can see in the panel, Dr. Kokila is there.
Yes,
Dr.
ma'am.
Pooja, Dr. Shivali, Dr. Gunjan, and Dr. Tina. Are you there? Just need the camera on because I will not be able to identify. Can I have
Dr. Tina
sharing?
had a case. अच्छा मैम आ गए ना? Okay.
Acha, Dr. Shashi Arya is there. Can I have the sharing rights, Karan?
हाँ हाँ.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Dr. Ruchika Goyal, I can see she's there.
No.
I'm still not able to
Good
share.
evening, ma'am.
Yeah, hi, good evening. Yes. I think now is the panel visible?
Yes, yes. Yes, ma'am.
It
Yes,
is
thank
visible,
you.
ma'am.
Thank you so much. So, I'm welcoming all the expert panelists. We'll go to our case. The first case, she is a 30-year-old lady who was resident of Noida. She visited Sir Gangaram Hospital seeking IVF within 9 months of getting married, with a history of previous 2 ovarian surgeries in the last 1 year. Okay, her menstrual history, she was menstruating regularly every 4 days, bleeding and coming every 30 days. Obstetric history, married since 9 months. There was no other significant medical history worth mentioning. So
हाँ
this
जो
girl
बिल्डिंग
was
नई बिल्डिंग
diagnosed with large ovarian mass 1 year back. In 2022, she had a laparotomy with right salpingo oophorectomy, infracolic omentectomy, peritoneal biopsy, which was in the first hospital, which said well differentiated mucinous carcinoma involving right ovary. Now, a review histopathology at Tata Memorial Hospital was undertaken, and it said borderline mucinous tumor, and subsequently after the medical board's discussion and reevaluation, it was finally suggested that she doesn't need any chemotherapy and further treatment was advised. Now, on further follow up, in February 23, she had a left ovarian cyst, which was 5.8 into 3.6 into 4 centimeter with septa seen, and a contrast MRI sets septated cystic lesion 8.9 into 8.4 into 7 centimeter, encasing the left ovary, abutting the uterus and bladder. PET-CT, well-defined lobulated cystic mass with internal septations in the pelvic cavity, likely an complex ovarian cyst. Now, these were the tumor markers: CA125, beta HCG, alpha fetoprotein, CEA, and CA 19.9, and they all were within normal limits. Now, she went back to the primary hospital, and a second exploratory laparotomy with left ovarian cystectomy was done. A frozen section said benign tumor, left ovarian biopsy, again, no signs of malignancy in that ovary. So husband has no significant medical surgical history. Patient presents to us within a married life of 9 months, seeking early IVF in view of previous 2 ovarian surgeries. Now there are a couple of questions which can arise in our mind. So Dr. Kokila, you can address the first question, that how do you proceed in such kind of a case?
Hello everyone. Yeah, so it's a case like the second time she does not have the cancer. So basically, we would like to know I would like to do the MRI to find out any like any evidence of recurrence of the cancer which was there on the other ovary before starting. And second thing is very important is the counseling of this patient, and we need to counsel and see her AMH, what are the response we are going to get by doing a stimulation. This patient is young, so there is a very good chance of her conceiving, but with the stimulation, what the drugs what we are going to use, we have to explain about the chances of recurrence with of the cancer which was there in the other ovary previously has to be explained to her, and pros and cons of undergoing IVF should be explained to her. And to reduce the fertility time, means as she can become a pregnancy, she can achieve the pregnancy early, we can take her for the IVF in this case. And looking at her age, she's young, so the good we can get the good response, and we can give her a positive pregnancy. That's the main thing we have to evaluate and counsel before starting this case.
Dr. Tina, do you want to add something when it comes to this kind of a case or any challenge you are expecting?
Ma'am, we do not have the final report of the second histopathology, it's just a frozen section.
Okay. Dr. Tina is not there. Doctor.
Ma'am, you're breaking up.
Said said was benign. Then again, a board meeting was held, and the final conclusion was that the second ovarian tumor was a benign ovarian tumor.
Yeah, definitely, ma'am. We need to rule out the malignancy. Yeah, ma'am. I'm Dr. Varda. And yes, because the report was frozen section report, because the specificity of the frozen section report is
yes,
quite
Dr. Varda. No, the final histopathology also said that it was a benign ovarian tumor.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, if it's done, then can we have to assess the ovarian reserve? And as Ma'am Kokila ma'am rightly said, that we need to exclude malignancy. We need to follow multidisciplinary approach, have a tumor board review to confirm any active malignancy, and then we can go ahead with the ovarian reserve assessment and proceed with the urgent fertility preservation IVF, because her ovarian reserve is already reduced. And then we can opt for a stimulation protocol in which the estrogen levels with the which has a minimum estrogen exposure, and we can freeze embryos. We can counsel her regarding that.
Why should we free
Yes.
estrogen low? What is the rationale of that?
No, like we can directly go for the IVF in that case, because the second tumor has turned out to be a negative.
No,
It's a benign tumor, so she can directly go for conceiving and continue the pregnancy, and remaining embryo can be free.
Yeah, remaining embryos.
No,
Yes,
that is
yes.
perfectly fine, but
Yes.
whoever was speaking said that we should keep the estrogen low. Why is that? What is the rationale of that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
ma'am, definitely in a borderline
not a
tumor, it's
estrogen-
not
not estrogen
actually required. You're
receptor
right, it's not
positive.
actually required, but
No, but it doesn't. It is. They're not. They don't have ER. They're not ER positive.
yeah. It's more. It has more significance in the breast.
Yeah. Whenever we have these discussions, please let us be very specific on what we are talking about. And if somebody is saying something, which sometimes, you just say something and you don't realize what you have said it, I think it's very important that we at that point only get it on the right track, so that the message that goes across is that whenever we are doing something, and unless it is ER positive, there's no point in trying to look at giving letrozole, because letrozole has its own problems.
Right.
Good evening, everyone. Myself, Dr. Shashi.
You know what? My experience is that with letrozole, I haven't seen a poorer oocyte or a poor embryo conversion, because we give it to so many patients, risk of DVT or anything. What is your experience? Theoretically, they have written,
experience is
but
that,
practically, I haven't seen.
And literature, there is a lot of reports on oocyte
But practically, we haven't seen that in our clinical
And ma'am,
practice.
sometimes it does reduce the total dose of gonadotropins required.
Yes.
So sometimes we add it to the
No,
stimulation.
I'm not saying don't add it. What I'm saying is the message should not be
Yeah,
that
yeah,
we
yeah.
add it
That
to keep
is
the
absolutely
estrogen low.
right. It's
I'm not
preferable
saying
for a
don't
breast
add it.
cancer case.
I'm saying that
Yeah,
you cannot say that estrogen will be low, therefore we have to give it.
No, yeah. Okay.
Yes,
Hello, madam.
any of the panelists?
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
Dr. Shashi.
Yeah, ma'am. What was the AMH of this patient after 2 laparotomies?
Yes, so very good. So the next question which came was that what could be the AMH, and the serum AMH was 0.6
Then, ma'am,
nanomolar.
ma'am, she is only 9 months married. Why can't we give her the chance of normal pregnancy? Is there any tubal factor, or is there any other male factor? Why are we giving her IVF?
Yeah, so basically in view of 2 laparotomies with 1 ovary gone, and she must have been trying for a couple of months, and so she decided that she wants to go for early ART services.
Okay. But after these 2 laparotomies, such a young patient, 9 months married, we should give her expectant manager. Yes, this patient has already taken expectant. That's why we are jumping onto the IVF. Okay.
Good evening, ma'am.
And she's borderline also. Yes.
Ma'am, as per
Yes,
my
Dr.
understanding,
Shivali.
as per my understanding, this is not a case of malignancy. The only problem we are having is we are racing against time. So we just want to preserve the patient's fertility. We can discuss this with the patient. We can preserve her oocytes or embryos basically. She is married. And then depending on tubal factor and other factors, she can be given chance for normal pregnancy too. We are just afraid that her ovarian reserve will be gone, or she might have recurrence. So we want just to freeze her fertility.
Yes, ma'am. That is what is my point was, that it is the AMH is 1.2, and what is about her AFC? If the AFC is good, we can keep this patient under expectant for a few months, not as years.
Besides,
At least 2 months we can get.
as she
Even
has
we can go
undergone,
with IUI for that patient first.
as she
Then
has
we can
undergone
jump on the IVF.
2 laparotomies, so there may be some surgical challenges also in retrieving oocytes, and there may be some challenges with oocyte quality also. So all these factors should be discussed with the patient. We should preserve her embryos if possible, and then she can be given natural chances also.
So I can share a very sad experience of borderline ovarian tumor, that one of our patients had a borderline ovarian tumor. She had 2 babies, and she was told a complete surgery, which is a complete hysterectomy after the completion of the family with removal of ovaries, which she did not go, because you get busy in your metastasis later because it turned into malignancy. So when we are dealing, the second ovarian tumor, yes, was completely benign, but the first one turned out to be a borderline. So we have to be vigilant. And yes, keep in mind, I think the girl, because she had gone through 2 laparotomies, wanted to choose a pathway which gave her a highest fecundity possibly, but that is completely true, that low AMH, maybe natural pregnancy could have been tried, but they had already been, I think, trying since the beginning of their marriage. So during ovarian stimulation, yes,
Sorry,
who
ma'am, to
wants to?
disturb. I
Dr.
would just
Ruchika,
like to.
yes, please give your views.
Sorry, ma'am, to join in late. I would just like to add one point, that we should not go with the idea that BOTS are non-malignant tumors, because in the histology of BOTS, if there are micropapillary presentations are there and microinvasion is there, they can also turn to be malignant.
webinar में हूँ.
So, ma'am, these patients also require lifelong follow-ups. So, just pregnancy is not enough. They would still require, even after fertility treatment, a follow-up so that to keep them under vigilance.
Yes, very
So,
right. We have also had very bad experiences with borderline tumors.
because the name may suggest borderline, but they still have to, they have malignant potential and they have to be monitored. And yes, spontaneous pregnancies can occur, but keeping the case scenario in mind, we can proceed with IVF in this world.
So
Sorry,
So during
I just got a call that somebody is going through some malignancy treatment, wants an urgent sperm preservation. So I was just telling that the lab has closed. See, this is the challenge, of fertility preservation. Just Dr. Ruchika, you were very correctly telling that we cannot take any of these borderline ovarian tumors so lightly. Now, can any of my panelists, maybe who have not given any answer right now, during ovarian stimulation, what precautions to be taken? And we just heard from Dr. Nalini, ma'am, that in ovarian masses, you don't need to keep the estradiol level low, but if you want to keep it, then you can add letrozole. And will one ovarian stimulation be enough?
So, hello, ma'am. I'm Pooja.
Yeah, Dr.
I'm
Pooja,
from
hi.
Raipur.
Can hear
Hi.
from you.
Yeah. So during ovarian stimulation, like we have already heard from Nalini ma'am, there are 2 to 3 protocols, antagonist, dual, or if she's in a hurry, then random start or dual stim can be also thought of. So antagonist, we will see as her AMH is 0.6. So we'll start with the FSH and HMG combination, and letrozole also can be given or cannot be given as per the consultant's choice. And then we can use the antagonist protocol. And if the dual trigger is used, then will freeze the egg embryos and we'll do the FET.
So we just heard from the presentation which Dr. Nalini presented that since she has low reserve, so possibly we did a counseling of dual stimulation, follicular phase. We gave her a recombinant FSH for 7 days and 5 eggs were retrieved, and again a luteal phase stimulation, and where she required an FSH and LH, and in the first few days was only FSH, and but only 2 oocytes were retrieved. So in this case, additional letrozole, I gave it to keep the estradiol level low, which was 999 and 89 picograms. But of course, we just learned that there is no absolute need in ovarian tumors. But good part is that out of these 7 oocytes, she actually made, because she was a young girl, 4 embryos and good quality embryos, and single embryo transfer was performed, and she conceived and delivered a healthy baby. So I just want to know the last question from the expert panelist, that will you offer her a hysterectomy at the completion of her family? Maybe 1 or
Ma'am,
2 or just
before,
for an
yeah,
observation.
ma'am, before this, I would like to add this about the dual stimulation, as she is not having a scarcity of the time. Here, we are not worried about her time because she doesn't require to undergo any surgery or chemotherapy. So instead of dual stimulation, can we give her a double stimulation, like 2 cycles? Because it says like 2 cycles gives a better number of oocyte compared to the dual
If she's from the
stimulation.
same city and traveling and time is not an issue. So we did
Yeah.
a study earlier. We were really happy with our dual stim. Then we did second study with bi-stim and double stim, and we found same results. So we have gone into double stimulation, looking at different, because your dose of gonadotropin could be low. But earlier we were
Yes.
really happy with the embryo conversion in the luteal phase of the stimulation.
Right. Okay, ma'am.
Any of the panelists want to add anything, and then we can move to the second case?
Ma'am, in cases of borderline ovarian tumor, as such, these patients can be kept under observation and follow-up, but no need to go for a definite
Hysterectomy. Yes.
hysterectomy in these cases. But follow-up is mandatory in these patients.
Right.
Dr. Nalini ma'am, do you want to give any more?
No, I think Ruchika has just said it, that it's important to keep these patients under strict follow-up. And if she wants that, some people, they have to be compliant. That's very important. And if they're
Yes,
going to be
that is
non-compliant, then you might as well go ahead and complete the surgery.
So the problem in India is because we don't have any method to, keep on tracking them as a central registry or something. So they get lost to follow up. And then it becomes patient's duty on their own to be vigilant, because we will give them an instruction. But when they deliver, some kind of an advice on the discharge paper should definitely be mentioned, that we have counseled them, that what is the kind of vigilance we are asking them. So can we move to the next case? So this girl came to me again few years back. She was a 16-year-old girl, came with her father, I remember, unmarried, resident of Delhi, and accompanied by her parents. Father was a very intelligent and learned man. She was diagnosed with uterine malignancy in Jan 2023, again at Rajiv Gandhi Hospital. After an oncology board meeting, she was advised staging with total abdominal hysterectomy and bilateral salpingo oophorectomy. And she was referred to our IVF consultant by primary treating oncosurgeon for fertility preservation. Now, what had happened was that she presented to Max Hospital in December 2022 with complaints of heavy menstrual bleeding for 2 years, heaviness in lower abdomen for 6 months. There was a large ill-defined lesion on MRI, 12 by 10 centimeter, with multiple cystic areas seen involving the fundus, posterior right lateral wall, signs of atypical uterine fibroid with severe cystic degeneration. She underwent open myomectomy in December 2022. Histopathology showed poorly differentiated uterine tumor. Then the histopathology slides were reviewed and IHC markers were done at Rajiv Gandhi Hospital in Jan. Histopathology said low-grade endometrial stromal sarcoma. And I remember that was the first time I was also seeing in this kind of a young girl. Section showed tumors arranged in lobules, infiltrating the myometrium with lobules, seen separated by broad smooth muscle septa, mitotic activity 0 to 1 per 10 high power field, lymphovascular emboli present. So IHC marker was positive for CD10, whatever, expressing a low-grade stromal tumor. PET CT, metabolically active uterine lesion with pelvic and para-aortic lymphadenopathy. She was given tablet tamoxifen once daily for 2 months. An oncology board meeting was held and decision for TAH with bilateral salpingo oophorectomy taken after fertility preservation. So now the question, because these kind of patients will come to you, dilemma of an unmarried young girl to go through fertility preservation. What is a special counseling, clearance from the medical board, guardian's consent? Can we follow what is the ART law? How long the gametes to be stored? So can we have our panelists' view on it?
Ma'am.
Yes. Yes, Ruchika, continue.
Ma'am, can I speak? Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, in the case history, I found a few points missing, as this was a case of low-grade endometrial sarcoma, and this is a sarcoid tumor, not a carcinoma. So the estrogen progesterone receptors were missing when we have, but we have started on tamoxifen, this patient. And secondly, ma'am, as such, those LGS are indolent tumors, but this girl has presented with stage 3C. So, should we have confirmed the diagnosis of whether this was a low grade or a high grade endometrial stromal sarcoma?
So these were the all descriptions, the referral which I got from Rajiv Gandhi after all the mitotic figures. If you see, they were low, hai na?
Yes,
8
ma'am,
to 10.
but the low grade and the high grade differentiate in the form that the estrogen receptors are positive in low grade and they're negative in high grade. And the prognosis.
So can you see IHC markers, the different markers, what they did? Because the referral which I got from the hospital, that after their board meeting, they said it's a low-grade stromal, metabolically active, but low-grade tumor.
Because low grade have good prognosis, they have slow progression, and
no, but then you know what? I remember that the ultimate treatment is hysterectomy for these people.
Yes.
ultimate treatment is this because
Hysterectomy,
the
yes.
recurrence and the metastasis is also high.
Yes. In sarcoma, the recurrence rate is very high, and I
Very
think you
high.
have to, yeah, you have to go for a hysterectomy.
It was a
It's a
large
sarcoma.
mass.
Yes. So, ma'am, here we can think of dual stimulation to preserve the oocytes. We have to explain her the aspiration rate of the oocyte, what we are retrieving, because the number of oocyte to the blastulation rate should be explained to her, because we are going to lose the oocytes at many stages, like during the thaw, again during fertilization, and then blastulation. So how many numbers of cycles she may have to go, that we have to explain. How many number of oocyte we would like to preserve, that also we have to explain. And here I would like to ask Nalini ma'am, can we go for a ovarian tissue reserve, cryopreservation of
Sorry,
ovarian
ma'am,
tissue?
my net just
See, she has
disconnected.
attained puberty.
Oh,
So
so the
at
point of
puberty,
She's like
there is no
70.
point of ovarian tissue cryopreservation if you're going to take out the uterus, isn't it? At least if she has oocytes,
Yes.
she can use a surrogate. But with the
Right. Okay. So basically, I mean, we require 2 or 3 cycles of oocyte retrieval in this case. And when we are doing the oocytes, we can go start.
what's happening with
Two
the
devices.
there's so
I
much
think
echo.
if you open two devices simultaneously, there's an echo.
Okay. We can start with a random start, ANTEC protocol, and dual stimulation, as well as one more stimulation can be offered to her. At least we can keep a target of preserving at least more than 20 mature oocytes, because she is young, and she will give a, like, oocyte retrieval will be good. We can retire good number of oocytes, so we can plan according to that. And we have to explain about the surrogacy also, because she is not having going to have a uterus. So we have to explain the surrogacy, the difficulties what she is going to face for the surrogacy, the ART law, also, like, everything we have to explain to her, how she can achieve a live birth of a baby. So all the steps should be explained to her, and at least we should prepare for at least 2 cycles, because when we are going for surrogacy, it's not necessary that she can conceive in a single cycle. So we may have to explain about the multiple cycle requirement also. Multiple cycles of embryo transfer may be required in her case, and all that have to be explained and counsel about that. And
Dr. Shivali and Dr. Gunjan, what do you want to say?
Ma'am, so very proper counseling is needed because the treatment is having uncertainty. Definitely surrogacy is required, will have financial issue too. So it is multidisciplinary approach, psychosocial as well as reproductive endocrinologist. The team should counsel the patient. And as ma'am said, as per me, these girls may give in one single stimulation also they can give enough number of oocytes, but definitely the oocyte number is not equal to the number of embryos, so we should have surplus oocytes only. And as per ART law, we can freeze the gametes till 10 years, but with a special permission, that window can be expanded.
Yeah. So, Dr. Pooja, Dr. Vardha, then we can move ahead.
Yeah,
So
ma'am, we need to counsel the patient and tell regarding as how long we can preserve the gametes, because it is ideally for 10 years. But in case of such cancer patients, we can prolong the time. But all these things need to be documented. The consent of the parents, because she's a minor, she's also unmarried, and we need to document everything and everything, or it should be multidisciplinary approach, as rightly said. And the whole all the parents and everyone should be taken into confidence, I think.
Yeah.
And ma'am,
So before
the
definitive,
preservation should be always done at tertiary center only.
yes, this is very important because you should know the survival rate at your center, and that is important, and it should be over 90%, rather 95. Before definitive surgery, her parents were counseled regarding the fertility preservation by freezing her eggs because she had already attained puberty. AMH, you can see, was good. At Gangaram Hospital, again, we did an ultrasound, a scar tissue was seen. a tumor board meeting which is held in Gangaram Hospital regularly. So we presented this case and we took, a green signal from them that we are going ahead and doing the cryopreservation. So just involve the oncology team that is important of your own hospital or setup. So this is the tumor, how it looked like. And the consent from the legal guardians are important. They also were told about the future implications and need for surrogacy for future childbearing. A random start protocol was formed. Here I gave letrozole for 8 days, a recombinant FSH on a lower dose. Her AMH was high. Then HMG for 2 days. Possibly she was showing a little lower response, and tag cycle, agonist trigger, and total terminal E2, of course, because of letrozole was low. A transvaginal guided oocyte pickup was done, and 7 oocytes were cryopreserved. Now, ideally, more oocytes should have been cryopreserved. So I think the oocytes retrieved were around 10 and 7 were mature. The problem was that they didn't come for a second cycle and they went ahead with the whole radical surgery. So if we can see from the history, there was a delay in receiving a definitive cancer treatment because it took some time from myomectomy to review of the slides to going ahead with some medical treatment and then considering that she needs a hysterectomy. But now I hope that there is a good longevity of this patient and will not only need IVF but also surrogacy. So this is what she underwent: a staging laparotomy with total abdominal hysterectomy, bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy with pelvic lymph node resection, retroperitoneal lymph node dissection, infracolic omentectomy. And the diagnosis final was high-grade ESS with mitosis, which is 10/12. I think Dr. Ruchika was telling me LV1 was present. She was advised an MRI after 6 months and no further radio or chemotherapy. So I will end here. Dr. Nalini ma'am, do you want to give any of your suggestion or something? Then we will.
The only thing is that I wish you had started a slightly higher dose when you started off, but that's all right.
Yeah.
Sometimes patients don't respond the way we expect them to. But that's about it. Everything else, and she has. Surrogacy is such an expensive procedure.
I know that time it was
I don't
still.
even know whether it's going to go anywhere.
Yeah. Thank you. Dr. Neeti, you can take over. And Dr. Meenu.
Sure, ma'am. Am I audible?
You are.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, Shweta ma'am, Nalini ma'am, and Dr. Kokila, and all the panelists who have joined today and giving me this opportunity to present before you. So this is a case report from Spain. So why I have selected this is because it has.
Have you shared? Can we all see? I'm not able to see.
Slide is
Yes, ma'am.
visible.
Not able to see.
You have
Okay,
to,
just
you
a
have to
second.
open
I
the
will.
folder. Yeah.
Just a
Yes.
Yes.
Screen now.
Now it's visible?
Yes. Make it full screen.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah, so basically this is a case report from Spain. So why I've selected this is so that we understand that because there was a lot to learn basically. So here's the case. Without wasting any time, I'll share the case. So there is this 43 years old nulliparous lady who's been married for 4 years and has been trying since 3 years and is willing to get pregnant. However, she is having some abnormal uterine bleeding all throughout.
So when the ultrasound was done, the uterus was normal sized, anteverted, but the endometrium was thickened. It was 17 mm with increased vascularity within the endometrium. Hence, a biopsy was done, which came out to be grade 1 endometrioid carcinoma. When they did the MRI, it was a disease confined to endometrium. There was no myometrial invasion, no lymph node involvement, and there was no extrauterine disease. So it was a FIGO stage 1A grade 1 endometrioid carcinoma. So Dr. Kokila ma'am, please, is she the right candidate to offer fertility preservation?
As she is nulliparous, definitely she is the right person to offer the fertility preservation. But before going ahead with the fertility preservation, she has to be explained about the outcomes, and we need to counsel her very in detail about the what are the probability of having a live baby in her hand. The first of all, her age, which is she is like 40 plus. So the age will definitely will reduce her number of oocytes, number of euploid oocyte will also be reduced. Then second thing is what about her AMH? I don't know. Did they mention the AMH level? So we have
Yes,
to.
ma'am. I'll be coming to it, ma'am.
Okay, fine. So we have to explain her the fertility potential in her case and what are the chances where we can go for a failure and number of cycles she may require to undergo because she is 40 plus.
Absolutely correct, ma'am. Absolutely correct. So here, fertility preservation means preserving a uterus or her ovaries. If I'm, please correct if I'm wrong.
Yes.
So now for her, it is a case where there is a tumor confined to the uterus.
Yes.
Only if it is grade 1, there is no myometrial invasion, there is a strong fertility desire, and it is stage 1 with no extrauterine disease, and she is ready for close follow-up. Yes, she is the candidate for that. We can allow her fertility preservation. So first thing is this. Now,
Dr. Neeti, I would like to add one thing to it.
Sure, ma'am.
We will also do a molecular prognostication of this patient, and we will see her molecular test of pole, MMR deficient or proficient, and P53 type, because that will also prognosticate her eligibility, whether she is fit candidate for fertility preservation or not. If she is MMR deficient, like she is having some familial cancer histories, then she is an intermediate risk. Or if there are copy number high of P53, then again she is not an ideal candidate for fertility preservation. So to all these parameters, we should also add the molecular prognostication before offering the patient fertility preservation.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the feedback. Absolutely. So according to the ESGO-ASHRAE ESG guidelines for the fertility sparing treatments, what are the contraindications for fertility preservation in uterine cancer? Number 1 is stage 1B and above, cervical stromal invasion, nodal disease, distant mets, or the histology is serous clear cell carcinosarcoma, etc. And as Dr. Ruchika rightly said, Dr. Tina ma'am, what investigations would you like to check before offering her fertility preservation? Dr. Tina ma'am, any of the panelists can answer this question.
Before going for a fertility preservation, as Dr. Ruchika has said that her marker should be checked. That number 1. And second thing is the AMH should be checked. Number 3 is her general condition, because that also affects the quality of the oocyte as well as the prognosis of these patients. So her general condition should also be evaluated, and MRI should be done to find out whether she is not like in a stage more than 1B. That also should be evaluated to find out, and according to that we can go ahead.
There is no involvement and no myometrial invasion.
And as such, though she is of elderly age, she has been married for 4 years and she has not conceived. So, now we will go for an IVF or we will do an oocyte or embryo cryopreservation, but there may be other factors also which have to be checked for. because she has not spontaneously conceived in
Absolutely,
4
ma'am.
years of
Absolutely.
marriage.
And considering her age, she's 43 and she's having uterine cancer. So our focus will be mainly to preserve the uterus, and then we can always counsel her for going through the other route of
Yeah.
IVF with
Al-
donor oocytes.
Yes, and along with that, we have to counsel her about the recurrence of this uterine cancer because of the hormonal
Absolutely.
treatment, and what are the possibility of obstetric complication which she can face during her pregnancy because of her age. All this, the both parameter has to be explained to her.
Definitely with the counseling.
One more point, madam. As
Yes,
Ruchika was saying, her male factor should also be evaluated.
ma'am, you are not audible.
Her male factor should also be evaluated, madam.
Yes, ma'am, definitely. The semen was good.
Yeah.
The semen was good.
Okay.
However, her AMH and AFC were on the lower side. Her AMH was 1 and AFC was 4 to 5, combining both the ovaries.
Okay.
So, Dr. Ruchika, would you like to answer this question? So, right now she has come to you with stage 1 FIGO.
Because once we have seen her desire for fertility preservation, so we have to conserve her uterus. We can offer her progesterones, high dose progesterones, in form of either medroxyprogesterone acetate or migestrol acetate, or we can, the best thing is to offer an LNG IUCD, which will give a good suppression of the disease. And then we can do a follow-up every 3 monthly and do biopsies till 2 negative biopsies are attained in this patient. Hysteroscopic resection may be done if it is desirous for of the lesion.
Sure, ma'am. So in this particular case, they have treated her by using LNG Mirena, and subsequently they did 3 months of biopsies. Every 3 months they did the biopsy till the disease was negative. However, hysteroscopic resection with progesterones gives more than 90% of the complete response in cases with endometrial cancer. Dr. Shashibala ma'am, how will you like to follow her? Though it has been already answered, if you can give us an
Yes. Okay, so in this case, as Madam Ruchika has said, the patient has to be given high dose of progesterone or IUG, LNG IUS, so as to protect her endometrium, as well as we have to do the endometrial biopsy at 3 monthly till 2 biopsies are negative for her, and then we can go ahead with the fertility preservation and IVF.
Absolutely. So we have to repeat the hysteroscopy and biopsy every 3 months until there is complete histological response has been confirmed. So when you think the treatment is successful, when there is no hyperplasia, no atypia, and no cancer, now it is the time to do the fertility treatment for her. So, Shushma Verma, ma'am, I think I saw your message. You have joined. How will you assist her in reproduction once her cancer has been taken care of? I think ma'am is not there. Dr. Varda, you can answer this question. Am I audible?
So yeah,
Yes,
you are audible, Dr.
Yes.
Niti. But in this patient, we can go with the entire protocol.
Am I
after
audible?
evaluation. Yeah.
So I think once the remission has occurred, we should not waste time and immediately
Once we get 2 reports negative, we can start with the further treatment.
we need to counsel this patient very well because she is already 43 years of age and the chances of retrieving euploid embryos in such cases are very meager. So we need to tell her, and also give option of donor oocytes. We can use duostem, bistem, whatever she's
And PGTA.
PGT should be offered to this patient.
If she's going for a self cycle, we can offer her PGTA. And if she's willing to go for a donor cycle, we can offer her donor cycle also, which will not affect her. There is a less chances of remission of the recurrence of endometrial cancer if she's going for donor oocytes.
Absolutely, ma'am. So the best way is not to wait.
It does not assure a increase in live birth rate. It only decreases the miscarriage rate. So it is just an option which she can go in for, but it does not improve the live birth rate. So she should be well counseled for this.
Right.
Absolutely. So she has to be counseled between the balance between the recurrence of the disease and wasting time using her own oocytes and waiting for a euploid embryo to occur and getting pregnant.
Right.
So 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 once the complete remission was occurred, this patient, they removed the Mirena. They offered a donor egg IVF because she was convinced that wasting time using her own eggs for IVF and going to PGTA can only lead to remission, can only lead to recurrence also, and then it may lead to, nothing would be left. They created the embryos and did the embryo transfer. She achieved pregnancy. And what if, suppose there is no remission? Dr. Pooja, if you want to answer this question. Dr. Pooja, are you there? Suppose this patient has no remission.
Dr. Niti, this is we have deviated from the standard treatment of care. Once she achieves pregnancy, she should undergo hysterectomy.
And I will come to it. Suppose all these things have happened. We have removed, suppose if we haven't done donor egg IVF, we are still in that phase. If there is no remission, what will you do? Will you continue with fertility preservation?
No, if for 1 year, if there is no remission, if we do not get negative reports, then she has to go forward with the definitive treatment.
Definitive treatment is total hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy.
Radical hysterectomy has to be performed for her.
Correct, correct. Okay, so now she has delivered successfully, and what should you be counseling her now, Dr. Gunjan?
Yes, after delivery, we should wait for 5 months, and then we should counsel her regarding definitive surgery. This is total laparoscopic hysterectomy or bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy.
Absolutely correct. So the ESG recommendation is definitive hysterectomy once family completions is achieved in all patients who underwent fertility sparing management for endometrial cancer. And this recommendation is consistent throughout the international guidelines and expert consensus statements. So to summarize, this was a case of a 43-year-old patient. She was a nulliparous, diagnosed by direct biopsy guided hysteroscopy of grade 1 endometrial cancer stage 1A. After the conservative treatment LNG IUD, the patient entered in complete remission, which was confirmed by every 3-month biopsy, which was guided by hysteroscopy. She conceived by IVF with donor eggs and delivered at 31 weeks, multiple gestation. She had a cesarean section for obstetric indication, and following delivery, she was offered TLH with bilateral salpingectomy after 5 months of delivery. So these are certain key evidence which supports fertility preservation in endometrial cancer. And thank you so much, all my panelists, for being such.
Niti, there is one question in the chat box that with very high dose progesterone like megestrol acetate, or when people are, can we do a simultaneous oocyte collection?
It again,
So I personally haven't done it myself with that high dose of a progesterone. With LNG IUCD, yes, so many times. What are everybody's views?
Ma'am, before disease remission is confirmed, should we do the oocyte collection? Because supposedly the disease does not remit and she has
Yes.
to undergo hysterectomy. Then
I can share my 3 cases, and I'm telling you that this was very nice and miraculous. They had atypical hyperplasias, and the first one, she stopped coming in between. Her husband landed up in an accident, had CI and C2, and had landed up in a hysterectomy. The second one, because of so much of progesterone and biopsies, the endometrium just stops to grow. This is second challenge which you face, and
Yes,
she
ma'am.
underwent a surrogacy. So, these are really nice, rosy cases. Practicality can be more challenging too.
Yes.
I think the disease remission definitely has to be there before you do any fertility preservation.
Absolutely,
Dr.
ma'am. And
Niti,
considering the age of the patient, she has to be counseled how much success will she get by freezing by using her own eggs.
Yes.
Dr. Geetika is asking, is natural cycle FET and letrozole is better? Yes, definitely. Because this is again what I have seen. Those with atypical hyperplasias also, the moment you give a higher dose of HRT, the endometrium really jumps. But the problem is that these atypical hyperplasias are mostly seen in full-blown PCOS girls. So you may have to give low dose HRT also, maybe transdermal estrogen, slightly keeping estrogen levels low.
Role of PGTM in these cases, if she has to go for her self eggs,
Yes,
definitely.
we have mentioned that, yeah.
PGTM, ma'am, not A.
I don't know. I know. So this
Because she is having
went through a donor egg cycle.
because she was having endometrial, and if she wanted to go for herself, so any familial cancer history, if we wanted to.
No, so the only one which I have done PGTM is for Lynch syndrome.
Yes, ma'am. In this case, if
Yeah.
there is a Lynch
Yes,
association
if there
with
is a Lynch syndrome, then definitely you can do a PGTM if she is a carrier.
Yes. Nalli ma'am's opinion on the case.
She has left. She has left. She said that this
Okay,
was a
ma'am.
very well discussed case, Dr. Neeti. We can go ahead with the next one because we only have now 7 minutes left. We
Sure,
need
ma'am,
to
sure.
platform. Yeah.
I'd like to invite Dr. Meenu to please present the case. Dr. Meenu?
She's unmuted. Dr. Meenu is muted.
Karan, can you help?
With the projection of the slide.
Dr. Meenu, you are breaking up. Can everyone hear Dr. Meenu?
No.
No. Dr. Meenu, are you? I'll call her. Ma'am, I think I can't see Dr. Meenu here. Shall I go ahead with the case?
Yes, ma'am.
Shweta ma'am? Shweta ma'am, are you there?
I'm there. I'm there.
I will just call Dr. Meenu if she's.
Dr. Meenu is here only. Dr. Meenu.
Please present the case.
Yes, she is here.
I can see her online. I can see her video also on.
Dr. Meenu, please present the case.
I think she is muted.
Karan, can you unmute Dr. Meenu?
I will call her. I'll call her.
I'm calling her, ma'am. She's not picking.
She is course. I think her network is low.
Oh, अच्छा.
ठीक है डॉक्टर नीति आप प्रेजेंट करो तब तक.
ठीक है, ma'am. So, this is Dr. Meenu's case. She has discussed in the Keen group as well that this is a 46-year-old.
I'm sorry, I had a problem with the connectivity, but you can go on, Dr. Neeti. I think you proceed.
Yeah, you can present if you're back, Dr. Meenu. Please go ahead. I have shared the slide.
You will have to project it, yes.
Yeah, I have already projected. Is my slide visible?
No, slides are not visible.
Why? I'm surprised. I've already sharing the slide. Now?
Yes, now it's visible. Yes.
Can see it now. So, good evening, everybody. I'm sorry for the little glitch there. So, this is one case I had discussed on the group, and Dr. Shweta very kindly said that I should present my own case here. So, this is a 46-year-old woman who has been married for 15 years. And she had primary infertility. She had two previous IUIs which failed 3 years back. Her husband's semen parameters were absolutely normal. Even at the age of 46, surprisingly, the AMH came out to be 1.02. On a scan, I could see an AFC of 6, 4 plus 2.
Now she was basically a case which presented with a large, left breast mass, about 21 centimeters. And when my colleague who sent this particular patient to me, she is a breast oncosurgeon. So she sent me with these details. That the biopsy showed a high-grade spindle neoplasm. The IHC showed malignant phyllodes tumor. It was ERPR negative. To rule out any kind of local pectoral disease, an MRI was done, so there was no local disease, and there was no distant metastasis, which was confirmed on a PET CT. So the plan was, as a surgeon, she said, I'm going to go ahead and do a mastectomy for this particular patient. And then probably we have 10 days before she wanted to give radiation. So in this 10-day window period, I had the opportunity of having the patient come and, probably undergo an IVF, because she at the first visit was very, very particular that she wanted a self IVF cycle. However, me as the doctor, the treating doctor, I told her that chances of retrieval are going to be poor considering her advanced age at 46 years of age, though the AMH and surprisingly the FC were okay at that age. And the possibility that it could be a failed cycle was high. The possibility that the embryos could be poor was high. The possibility that we could, probably not be able to make any embryo. So all this was done in my counseling to her. Now, the questions are something that, pertaining to this is what Dr. Neeti is going to be asking you.
Dr. Chibali, would you like to answer this question? Will you want to offer this lady fertility preservation?
Yes, as she is nulliparous and very keen to conceive, she should be offered.
Sure.
But as Dr. Meenu discussed, that we need to discuss with her the chances of success depending on her age, AFC, AMH, and considering her age, the chances of aneuploidy. And we need to discuss that we should opt for PGTA if we want to go for self-AIM, and the financial cost and the timelines. Everything should be discussed with the patient, but definitely fertility preservation can be offered to this patient.
Absolutely correct. So according to the SK and ASHRAE recommendations, all reproductive age women facing gonadotoxic cancer treatment should receive fertility preservation counseling. However, it should be individualized according to the age, ovarian reserve, time available before cancer treatment, expected success rates, and etc. So for this patient, yes, counseling is very, very important because she has an extremely low probability of live birth using her own autologous oocytes at 46. Dr. Varda, would you like to answer this question? What factors in this case influence the decision regarding fertility preservation?
Varda, are you there, ma'am?
In this case, because if we are stimulating the patient, then there may be chances that the TA breast, there are only the size of mass is very high, very on higher side. So there may be chances with the hormonal treatment, there may be sudden increase in the size of the mass.
I would like to bring to the notice that it is ERPR negative. So will that change your decision?
Yeah, definitely. We have a so yeah, we have 10-14 days, so we can go ahead with the stimulation protocol, but we need to counsel the patient regarding her advanced age so that the chances of getting euploid embryos is very less. Also, the ovarian reserve is very less. We have a long standing infertility period, almost 10 to 15 years. Also, yes, definitely. So we can go in for a stimulation in this case because there is absence of metastasis here. And probably she's going to master.
The thing about phyllodes tumor is that 10-year survival is as much as 87. But point is here that, of course, the age is advanced. And prognosticate her. And if she still wants to go ahead, as you're rightly saying, let her take a chance. But again, a successful outcome is very, very minimal considering her age.
Because after proper counseling, these 10-day window period can be utilized after proper counseling. Because after all, donor cycle, she will always have the option
You
for.
will always have the
She
option,
will
correct.
not
So
need for
let
stimulation.
her have one option of trying on her own gametes.
Gamete with full counseling. And as such, thyroid tumors are sarcoma. So they are ERPR negative itself. They will not be
Correct.
ERPR positive. And
Correct.
but it is a sarcomatous spread. So they will require therapy in form of local radiotherapy or chemotherapy afterwards.
Correct. Correct.
So, Dr. Veenu, will you just elaborate? So, this patient had 10-year time, and following back that, there will be surgery and chemo as well, right?
10 days time. So that is
10
what the
days.
oncosurgeon said, that she'll probably want to start radiation after about 10 days. So maybe in that 10 days, she could have, I mean, roughly 10 days. So she could have had a stimulation, as we say, a random start or maybe a dual stim. But unfortunately, the patient had fever after the surgery and she lost 3 to 4 days there, and then they kind of became reluctant and they actually have not proceeded. But let's see some other questions that are possible.
Sure. Sure. So we have already discussed about the stimulation protocol. So we'll move ahead. What about use of letrozole in ERPR negative cancers? Dr. Shashibala, madam? Am I audible?
Yes.
So, anybody can answer,
Bas-
any of the panelists
Can
can answer
use.
this
No,
question.
We can use
as if the
letrozole.
patient is a ERPR
These are
negative, the
negative. Yeah.
We should
letrozole has
use
no role,
letrozole.
and where there is no need to like keep the estrogen at lower level. And second thing is, she is 46, 47 years. She may require higher doses of gonadotropin, so we cannot give a minimal stimulation if we are planning to do the oocyte retrieval and preserve her own oocytes.
Yes.
Sure. So, yes, literature says that letrozole treatment is very safe. So, in most of the studies, yes, they offer co-treatment in breast malignancy to reduce the estrogen exposure, although the evidence is strongest in the hormone receptive positive disease. So, letrozole is commonly used in both ER positive and negative breast cancer patients because of its excellent safety profile and extensive supporting data. However, one may individualize in ER negative cases. Should PGTA? Definitely yes. We have already discussed
We have
this.
to discuss, yes, yeah.
Yes, we have already counseled her about the expected success rates.
Yes,
And
that's very important because in this case, like there are so many hurdles. First is the age, second is the aneuploid embryos are likely to be there. So we have to go for
Previous history of
PGTA.
infertility
Third
itself,
thing
for
is,
15 years, she has
yeah,
been married and still not conceived.
yeah. And third thing is like she has to undergo the treatment of breast cancer, which may require at least radiotherapy, chemotherapy, which may last for around maybe 6 months to 1 year. And after that, she will able to conceive. She will able to go ahead with the pregnancy. And so
Then the
like
2 years minimum she will require before
yes,
planning
going
for
for a
transfer.
pregnancy, yeah. And if the life expectancy, as we says, with the sarcomas is 10 years, we have to make her realize, we have to give a realistic check that like having a baby after 2 years, like you will start her family planning after 2 years.
She will
And
start her
then what
family.
about, yes, what will happen with the babies also? Like she has to consider
absolutely correct.
that things.
Considering
Yes,
that
ma'am.
we have the 50 years is the upper bracket, so she'll probably be 48 by that time. So there has to be very realistic, conversation about the fact that do they
Yes,
have a
yes,
family like that? Yes.
right.
Correct.
Is there a role of just putting your foot down as a treating consultant that no, we will not offer self-stimulation?
Ma'am, I
No,
think it is
ma'am,
never
we
that. It
can't
is
do that.
always
Very
selling the
true.
options and the possibilities. We
I
can't really
think
do
we
that.
should. We should tell her because this one stimulation will not help her.
Yes,
I
Yes,
mean,
ma'am.
Yes.
giving an
Correct.
algorithm that you need minimum 5 blastocysts to have one euploid.
Correct.
so we have to explain her about more, like
Yeah.
counsel her about go for donor if she wants.
But even then, as we are considering her age,
I
there's
know.
so many,
Dr.
social
Meenu had
factors.
called me and I remember she had told me, now this is the dilemma. I said, perfect. We are going to discuss this in the forum because anyone and everyone can come across these kind of case scenarios.
Right, ma'am.
Dr.
Ma'am,
Neeti, are we
please,
done?
Yeah,
Maybe
yes,
last
ma'am. We are
question.
done. This is the
So
last question, and we are discussing that only. What is a realistic reproductive strategy for this couple? Thank you. Thank you.
Can all those who are present open their cameras for a while? We just take one picture. Thank you so much for such interesting panel. Thank you, Meenu. Thank you, Neeti. Thank you, all the panelists here. And we would love to get a feedback that in future from this SIG, what are more things what you would like to hear, what we can include. Dr. Sanjay, I think
Yes,
you are
ma'am.
also seeing many patients. We would love to have your views so that we
Yes,
will
madam.
incorporate those things
My
in our
smiley suggestion is just to keep 10 years less age of the patients. At the age of 46,
Okay,
it is
let's
almost.
have a picture, everyone. All those who are attending, those who can switch on their cameras, we would love to have your picture. Okay, just 1 second.
Say cheese, everyone.
Okay, everyone smile. Neeti, your phone down.
Okay, ma'am. Yeah.
Perfect. We could take one picture. Now you can take. So thank
Ma'am,
you very much.
you've taken wonderful pictures. Yes,
Yeah.
I've taken through the webinar as well. Thank you so much,
Karan, for
Shweta
giving
ma'am.
us.
You've been wonderful, so supportive. Nalini ma'am and all the panelists, they were wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Meenu. And let's keep on discussing all these real life cases in our group so that we have a lot of learning during this time.
So we have about 117 members in the SIG group. Anyone who's present here can join. We will send the link again. And it was lovely to have you all. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Priya.
Thank you.
With all the
Thank
chapter
you, Kapila
secretaries
madam.
of the Central Zone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Dr. Kokila, thank you. I forgot to
Thank you,
thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank you.
Apologies that
Dr.
I could not
Gunjan.
join. I was
And
in
Dr.
a
Archana, who's been
Thank you,
coordinating
Dr.
that well.
Gunjan.
Bye. Bye. We'll exit.
Bye, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Kokila, ma'am.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Dr.
Thank
Neeti.
you, Dr. Sanjay. Thank you, Dr. Sanjay, sir. Thank you, everyone.